Yo, 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 everybody, we are back. It has been a long time, but we're back to break down UFC Fight Night. Ribas versus Dern 2, or Dern versus Ribas 2, taking place this Saturday, January 11th, the first event of 2025 for the UFC, and I couldn't be more excited, man. This is not a bad card at all. Obviously, the next card we have is going to be Arman Tsarukyan versus Islam Makhachev, and then Umar Nurmagomedov versus Merab Dvalishvili. That is a great pay-per-view card as well. That is the week after January 18th. But man, does it feel good to be back. Does it feel good to be putting content out. I know if you're a wrestling fan for my channel, I know that I said I was going to have wrestling videos out. That was the plan. I have been sick for about 4 weeks, which covers just about the entire time that we haven't had a UFC event. So I apologize, but my voice was way off. This is the first day in a long time that it actually sounds normal. Luckily, it came back when we're back for UFC and back for the fights and back for the breakdowns. But I apologize. I do have a lot of plans for wrestling content to come out. I am going to be uploading like a madman. As long as I can find the time to do so. I have a lot of ideas on things I want to do and a lot of ideas on videos I want to make for MMA and for pro wrestling. But we're going to get into it and get into the first fight up on the card. This is I believe it's a UFC Vegas. Yeah, UFC Vegas, what is this? UFC Vegas 101, 102? I think it's UFC Vegas 101. Dern versus Ribas 2. We're going to kick it off with the first fight up, which actually had an opponent change. It is going to be in the lightweight division. On short notice, you have Joe Solecki stepping in for Yanal Ashmuz, taking on Narulo Alliev. Narulo Alliev, however you want to say his last name. I believe it is Alliev. Narulo Alliev, minus 500 favorite. Joe Solecki, plus 390 on the underdog price tag. I'm going to be honest. I understand the odds, especially on short notice. I do think that there is some danger when it comes to the jiu-jitsu of Joe Solecki. He is very good when he gets to the body triangle. He's very good once he takes your back. He can even take your back on the feet and hold you up against the cage. We have seen Narulo Alliev get put in some bad positions, almost get put in a guillotine. I believe in his last fight in the UFC, almost got caught in a guillotine pretty deep. That is not a spot you want to be against Joe Solecki. You don't want to get your neck caught in a guillotine. You don't want to get caught in that front headlock because that's where Solecki is going to be looking to put you to sleep. And if he can't get the front headlock or get a guillotine from the front headlock, he can spin, take your back, put the body triangle in, and win on a lot of control time. That kind of comes down to the only way Solecki wins this fight. Is a lot of control time, a lot of back takes, a lot of body triangle, and holding and controlling Alliev, or catching him on a takedown attempt and getting his neck in a guillotine. We've seen him get caught in that position before. Being a heavy wrestler, he's going to usually shoot, and then when he penetrates on the takedown, he's going to leave his neck up, which can allow for you to get taken down. Just look at, or not allow for you to get taken down, but allow for you to get submitted. Just look at Vitor Petrino and Anthony Lionheart-Smith, another case where a big favorite shot in on a sloppy takedown attempt, lifted his neck up and got choked out by the better grappler. And I do believe Solecki to be the better jiu-jitsu artist, while I believe Narulo Alliev to be the better grappler, the better positional grappler, and the much better striker. Much better distance management, much better control, much better 1-2s down the middle, and he cuts angles very well. Solecki is in for a rough night on the feet, and I don't think it's going to be very close. I'm going to go with Narulo Alliev. I think Narulo Alliev, I think he is going to win this fight. I think he probably TKOs Joe Solecki. I think Solecki is live to get a submission. If it is a submission, and I'm going to call the exact submission, it's either a guillotine or a rear naked choke. I don't think he finds the submission. However, I think he gets beat up on the feet a little bit. I think Narulo Alliev takes him down. I think he gets on the top position. I think he avoids some submission attempts and then ground and pounds Solecki and gets him out of there. So I'm going to go with Narulo Alliev to get the job done via second round TKO over Joe Solecki. I think the big favorite gets it done, and we're going to move on to the next fight. All right, next fight up is in the women's strawweight division. you have a battle between Fatima Kline taking on Victoria Dudakova. In this one, I'm going to keep it short and sweet, man. I like Fatima Kline. I played her in her last fight against Jasmine Gadzhiyasulov, and I'm upset at myself because originally I played Gadzhiyasulov as the underdog, and I ended up switching my pick to Fatima Kline. I like this girl's striking. I like her jiu-jitsu. I know she got out-wrestled, out-grinded, got controlled by Jasmine Gadzhiyasulov, but I think Gadzhiyasulov would absolutely run through a girl like Victoria Dudakova, which kind of puts me in the position to where I think Fatima Kline should be a huge favorite, but I don't think any woman in any women's fight should be over a minus 400. I think that's where you really cap it. Unless you're a world champion, unless you've beat everybody in the division, you shouldn't be over a 4-1 favorite. And that's just the way I see it. Women's MMA is too unpredictable. You don't know. A lot of underdogs win. Sometimes underdogs make the fight way closer, but the favorite still wins, but they don't look like as big of a favorite as they were originally priced out at. I think women's MMA is something you should avoid in most cases for betting in 2025. There are certain spots that you can play. One in particular is Jasmine Gadzhiyasulov and Mayra Bueno Silva. I don't know what the odds are, but I like Gadzhiyasulov over Mayra Bueno Silva. And that puts me in this fight where I don't see Dudakova being near the level of pressure, takedowns, ground control, and being able to, I don't see her being able to control Fatima Kline. I think Kline can outstrike her on the feet. I think she's live to get a finish in this fight, and I think it could either be a KO or it could be a submission. She's got good striking. She's got good, straight, crisp punches. She throws good combinations, and she has really solid jiu-jitsu where she will attack for submission. She will look to sweep and submit, stand up, sweep, submit, get to the top position, and look to finish the fight. I like Fatima Kline to finish the fight. I don't necessarily love it in terms of, telling you to go bet on it because, again, women's MMA might want to avoid a lot of that in 2025 if you're looking to be successful in terms of betting mixed martial arts. And a lot of the times when I make mistakes in terms of the betting side, it's betting on women's MMA, which is something you shouldn't do. But breaking it down from an actual, technical standpoint, I like Fatima Kline, man. I think Fatima Kline is way cleaner, way crisper on the feet, and I think that she's going to be going for a lot of submissions. If she rocks Dudakova and catches her on a bad takedown, she might go for a guillotine, and if she, rocks her on the feet and stuffs the takedown, she might get a TKO. I'm going to go with Fatima Kline to get the job done. I'll go a second round ground and pound TKO. Like I said, I think submission's more likely, but because everybody's thinking submission, I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to go with a TKO. I think she hurts Dudakova, gets her tired, maybe rips a body shot and crumples her. So give me Fatima Kline, third round ground and pound TKO. I think she gets the job done, and I think she looks good doing it. All right, this next fight up in the light heavyweight division, a battle between two Contender Series alums from the 2024 season in Magomed Gadzhiyasulov taking on Bruno Lopes. Again, this is a fight where I did watch some tape on it, and I think that the grappling of Gadzhiyasulov is going to be a big problem for Bruno Lopes. I think he will be able to get takedowns. I think he will be able to control Bruno Lopes on the ground. But I also think Lopes is, in my opinion, he's the more well-rounded fighter. I think Bruno Lopes has the better striking. I think Lopes is a little bit more comfortable on the feet, and I think Lopes is comfortable in mixing up between the striking and the grappling. I think he is a more seamless mixed martial artist. Like, if I had to look at a fighter who I think could probably win fights in more positions than the other, I would say Lopes probably has the more well-rounded game. I think that the positional grappling of Gadzhiyasulov is very good, but I also think that Lopes is good enough on the ground to where he can threaten with submissions. He can maybe rock Gadzhiyasulov on the feet, and then maybe Gadzhiyasulov shoots a bad takedown and gets his neck caught up. Maybe he gets caught in a guillotine. Maybe he gets caught in a Darce choke. Maybe he gets caught in an anaconda. Bruno Lopes has showcased decent grappling. He's showcased the ability to get to the top position, land some shots from the mount, and he will look for arm triangles. He will look to set up submissions. He will look to slow cook or tenderize you with ground and pound in order for you to give up a submission. Whether he turns his back, whether he gets the opponent to turn their back and locks up a rear naked choke, whether he flattens them out and lands a lot of ground and pound. And I also believe Bruno Lopes to have the better striking on the feet. I think this fight is, in more ways than one, kind of a maybe 60-40 lean towards Gadzhiyasulov when you look at the tape. But in my opinion, I'm going to take the dog. I'm going to take Bruno Lopes. I think he's well-rounded enough to cause Gadzhiyasulov a lot of trouble. I think he's got the cleaner striking. I think he probably has more output on the feet as well. And I think he has good enough grappling to, even if he gets taken down, be able to work his way back up and get Gadzhiyasulov tired and then be able to unload with his striking a little bit more the later that the fight goes. So I'm going to say that this fight goes to a decision. I know that's probably not the smartest play because there could be a finish from either side, but I'm going to say Bruno Lopes wins 29-28 on the scorecards. I think he has enough to win 2 out of the 3 rounds. I think he will hurt Gadzhiyasulov on the feet a few times. I think he will get taken down and controlled for maybe a round in total. And I think the fight is going to be close. I think it's going to be competitive. But I think the fighter who has more impactful moments, I think the fighter who has more output on the feet, and I think the fighter who's closer to finishing the fight is going to be Bruno Lopes. So I'm going to take the dog here in Bruno Lopes. Give me Bruno Lopes, 29-28 unanimous decision. I think he gets the job done on the scorecards, but maybe he could find a finish late as well. It wouldn't shock me. But yeah, I like the dog in Lopes here. All right, up next in the women's flyweight division, you have a battle between Ernesta Kareckaite taking on Nicole Calliari. Or, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Nicole Calliari. When I look at this fight, I think the better grappler is 100% Calliari. I think Nicole Calliari can also strike on the feet. I've seen some kickboxing matches. You know, she can throw down. She has decent power. But I think she's heavily out-techniqued on the feet. And I also think when it comes to the cardio, I think the fighter who can push a higher pace and work their way back up if they get taken down and throw a lot of high-volume combinations is a girl like Ernesta Kareckaite. Now, I took Kareckaite against Diony Barbosa. And arguably, I think she did enough to win that fight. I played her as the underdog. And again, in this fight, she's not an underdog. She's a heavy favorite. Do I think that she should be a huge favorite in this fight? No. I think this fight should be kind of a pick'em. Maybe minus 150 Kareckaite, plus 120 Calliari. I don't think the odds are right. And it makes me want to stay away from it either way. And I understand people taking the shot on the dog in Calliari because she does have really good jiu-jitsu. If Kareckaite makes one mistake, you know, she can have her arm wrapped up. She can get her neck caught in a submission. She could get put in an armbar. She could get put in a triangle choke. She could get swept and end up on the bottom and lose rounds based on control time. I think that's really how Calliari wins this fight. I think she's live to get a submission, which is not rocket science, but I also think she wins this fight more often than not by trying to outpower, take down Ernesta Kareckaite, take her down, hold her down, get positional top time, I guess you could say, not positional. Get top time and win the fight based on controlling the positions. And I don't necessarily think Calliari has the gas tank to get Ernesta down and hold her down for 2 out of the 3 rounds. I think maybe she could do it for 1. Maybe the first round she takes her down, goes for submissions, has a very dominant first round, but it doesn't work out. And I think if that's the case, then I think Ernesta is going to be on the front foot. She's going to be on the gas. She's going to be pushing forward, and I think she's going to be putting that high-volume striking interface. 1-2, 1-2-3 low kick, hook low kick, 1-2, 1-2 liver low kick. Liver shot, left hook, right low kick, 1-2, 1-1-2, 2-3-2, and she's going to just be putting these combinations on her, walking forward, and eventually the takedowns are going to get more telegraphed. The takedowns are going to get easier to stop, and the striking of Kareckaite is going to pick up and up and up and up. I'm going to go with something I don't usually like to do when it comes to women's MMA. I've done it before. I try not to do it as much now, but I'm going to go with a late TKO for Ernesta Kareckaite. I think that she will find a finish. I think she's going to slow down Calliari, probably have a tough first round, get taken down, get controlled, put in some submissions, but she'll survive, and she'll get on that front foot, she'll get on that gas, and she'll start putting those combinations together. She'll start ripping the body. She'll start pushing Calliari against the fence. She's going to start drawing out those takedowns, making those takedowns more telegraphed. Now, we didn't see her really push the pace enough against Diony Barbosa in the 3rd round, where she could have arguably found a way to get a finish, and that's why I believe she probably probably did enough to win 2 out of those 3 rounds as the underdog, but the pick just didn't go our way there. Now she's a favorite, but I do think she will find a late finish. I'm going to go with a 3rd round TKO for Ernesto Kareckaite over Nicole Calliari. I know Calliari trains with Marina Rodriguez. I know she's a good jiu-jitsu grappler. She's competed in striking as well, but she leaves her chin in the air. She doesn't really move her head when she's striking, and I think she's going to get lit up by the much longer, much taller, much more rangy, and much more technical striker who I think has better cardio over the 15 minutes, and I think it's going to show its head in this fight. So give me Ernesto Kareckaite to get the job done here via a 3rd round TKO. Maybe play round 3 decision or Kareckaite. I would say if you're going to play KO decision, you might as well just take the money line. But I think round 3 TKO, KO round 2-3 for Kareckaite is probably the best way to look at it. So give me Ernesto to get the job done. A 3rd round TKO over Nicole Calliari. All right, next fight up is in the welterweight division. It is a short notice bout with a Contender Series alum stepping in to make his UFC debut in Jacoby Smith, taking on Preston Pressure Parsons, Triple P, baby. I'm going to be honest, man. I like Preston Parsons. I like the guy. He has decent striking, decent 1-2s. He's a very solid grappler, very good takedowns. But if he can't get the takedowns, he's decent on the feet, but he can't really get things going. I do think that he's live to win this fight by submission. Maybe a bad shot from Jacoby Smith. Maybe he wraps his neck up and gets a submission in a guillotine, or, stuffs a takedown and finds a way to wrap up an anaconda or a Darce choke. Wouldn't surprise me one bit if Preston Parsons got a submission over Jacoby Smith because of Jacoby Smith's forward pressure, his aggression, and just that forward, nose to the grindstone grappling style. I could definitely see that causing issues for Jacoby Smith if Preston Parsons is able to survive the first 5 minutes, first round and a half. But I'm going to be honest, guys. I think this Jacoby Smith kid, I think he's for real. I don't know if he's going to be a top-level contender in the UFC. He is coming off the Contender Series, so you do have to take everything with a grain of salt because you don't know how good he's going to look against a fighter in the UFC. But I think he's going to just kind of beat the crap out of Preston Parsons here, man. I think Jacoby Smith is going to get those takedowns. I think he's going to get on top. He's going to look for submissions. He's going to look for ground and pound. And I think he's just going to beat up Preston Pressure Parsons. I think he's going to slow cook him, get takedowns over and over and over again, get to the top position, land some big shots, get to the top position, land some shots, go back to the front choke, go back to the back, look for the rear naked choke. It doesn't land. Boom, boom, boom. Land some ground and pound. And just rinse and repeat until he eventually just drains the life out of Preston Parsons and finishes him late in the 2nd round. I'm going to go with Jacoby Smith to get a 2nd round ground and pound TKO over Preston Parsons. Similar to the pick I made on his Contender Series bout. It was a 2nd round TKO. I think it's a similar thing here. Parsons, UFC level competition. Would not surprise me if Parsons got this done. Caught a submission, hurt him on the feet, got him to shoot a bad takedown and caught a submission. I wouldn't be surprised. But if he wasn't able to submit Matthew Semmelsberger with all the submission attempts that he had, I don't think he's going to get a submission on Jacoby Smith. So I think Jacoby Smith is going to get those takedowns. I think he's going to land a lot of ground and pound, and I think he's going to just outwork and eventually break Preston Pressure Parsons. I'm going to go with a late 2nd round ground and pound TKO for Jacoby Smith over Preston Parsons here. I like the Contender Series alum. Always got to take it with a grain of salt because coming off the Contender Series, you never know. But I think Jacoby Smith's going to show out here, and I think he's going to have a pretty dominant performance. 2nd round TKO for Jacoby Smith. All right, up next, we've got another Contender Series alum in Marco Tulio Silva taking on the duelist in Ihor Potieria. To be honest, looking at this on paper, this seems to me like a place where you would play Ihor Potieria. I'm not a big fan of the guy. I don't think he's that great. He looked really good against Robert Brycek, but to be honest, I think Brycek he might have been a little bit overrated. I don't know. I think Marco Tulio Silva is solid. He's got good striking, a lot of power in his hands, good grappling, good submission attempts. Get takedowns, get on top, look for submissions. On the Contender Series, he landed a big right hand, hurt his opponent, and then landed a spinning back kick to the liver and put his opponent down. I think that he's more than live to knock out Ihor Potieria. This guy gets hurt in a lot of fights. He gets rocked. He gets submitted. He gets dropped. But in some fights, he looks decent. Southpaw boxing pretty much for his style. A lot of slipping, rolling, bobbing, and weaving. Really awkward, unpredictable. Front kicks up the middle. Lands that straight left hand. Looks to get on the outside. Land the straight left hand. And the one thing about Marco Tulio Silva is that this guy is hittable. He does get hit. He does get cracked. He has been, rocked and wobbled in fights before. I know he's undefeated. I know that he looked good on the Contender Series. I think that they're trying to get him a tee-up spot here against Potieria, who, hasn't looked great at all in his UFC career. His biggest win to date, aside from the Britchek win, is the win over Shogun Rua, who was pretty much a ghost of, UFC's past at this point. I wouldn't be comfortable picking Potieria, but I will tell you, I wouldn't be surprised if he won here because, Marco Tulio Silva, he gets rocked, he gets hurt, he gets hit a lot. His defense isn't the best, but he is a decently well-rounded fighter. I think that he will find a way to get the job done here. I think he probably submits Potieria. I'm going to be honest, wouldn't surprise me if he got a KO, but I think staying on the feet with Potieria for too long could be a problem, and I think the better striker overall is Ihor Potieria, but I don't really think he has the grappling to match it to the point where he could out-grapple Tulio Silva if the striking isn't going his way. I think Marco Tulio Silva, more often than not, would be able to resort to the wrestling, resort to the top pressure, resort to the ground and pound and potential arm triangles or rear naked chokes, or even, hurting him on the feet and getting a guillotine, kind of like Michel Pereira did. I'm going to go with the big favorite in Marco Tulio Silva, but I got to tell you guys, be careful, because I wouldn't be surprised if Potieria landed a big shot and wobbled Tulio Silva on the feet and hurt him. Again, it's a Contender Series guy. You never know. You got to take these with a grain of salt because they can look real good on the Contender Series, and then once they show up in the UFC, they don't look that great. But I'm going to take Marco Tulio Silva. I'm going to go Marco Tulio Silva via second round ground and pound TKO. I think he will get Potieria out of there. But again, a fight where I could understand you playing the big underdog in Ihor, and I think he's live to knock out Marco Silva. But I'm going to go Marco Tulio Silva via second round ground and pound TKO. I think he will get Potieria out of there, and it could be a submission, but I think he finds a finish. All right, I think we're a little bit out of order with this one. But we got a lightweight battle between Thiago Moises taking on Trey Ogden. This is an interesting fight and a fight that I think is pretty difficult to predict. A lot of people would just come into this fight thinking that Thiago Moises has the higher level UFC competition. Moises has fought the better guys, which is true. He's got more UFC experience, which is true. He's probably the better grappler overall in terms of the jiu-jitsu. I think it's true. But I think the better wrestler might be Trey Ogden. Ogden is not a bad grappler. Ogden knows when to get takedowns. He's got very good timing on when he shoots his takedowns. And the only problem with Trey Ogden is that he is a point fighter. He is a point fighter through and through. He almost got a submission in his second to last fight. I'm trying to think about who that was against, where he was dominating him, about to win a decision, and then, there was the no contest with the submission. I can't think of it. But in his last fight against Loik Radzhabov, he got rocked at certain points, and he didn't really like the forward pressure of Radzhabov. But he was out striking him. He was out landing him. He was getting takedowns of his own, and he looked really good. He looked a lot better in the grappling in that fight than I think people were expecting. He just got tired towards the end of that fight, but it was still a solid performance, a lot of top control, going from the mount to the arm triangle, back to the mount, back to the arm triangle, and was constantly looking to get a finish in that fight. Now, do I think Ogden would submit a guy like Thiago Moises? No, I don't think so. And I don't really think he has the knockout power to finish a guy like Moises. I think if there's a finish in this fight, it probably comes from Thiago Moises, who has decent striking, pretty solid kickboxing, punctuates his combinations with good low kicks, lands some good 1-2s, decent shots to the body, has good body kicks as well. Solid boxing. I would say he has the more powerful boxing, where I think Ogden might have the more technical hands, the better understanding of the check hook, the jab to the check hook, the 1-2, circling, moving around. I think there's a volume advantage on the side of Moises, and I just kind of feel like I'm going to lean a little bit more towards the side of the underdog in Trey Ogden here. I think at this point in his career, I think Ogden is on the up and up. Ogden is getting better and better and better with every performance. I just worry because, Ogden did lose to Jordan Levitt. He lost a split decision to Jordan Levitt, and I don't love that. But he also came in on his UFC debut and beat Daniel Zellhuber, who, his only other loss in the UFC, I believe, is to Esteban Ribovics, which is one that we called on our podcast. But I think Ogden has the solid enough striking to outpoint and out-technique Moises on the feet. I feel like he has better cardio than Thiago Moises, and I think he has the grappling to be able to fend off the wrestling of Moises and maybe even get some takedowns of his own and get some top control time, because Moises does very well from the top position, but if Ogden's the one getting the takedowns, I don't really see Moises throwing up arm bars or triangles from his back. He's a very good top side grappler, a very good fighter from the top position, but doesn't really do too much off of his back. And I could see Ogden getting takedowns and even winning top control time against the fighter who's thought to be the better grappler in Thiago Moises. So I wouldn't be surprised if Moises won because of the things we already talked about. The higher level of UFC competition, the solid striking, the more powerful striker, the better jiu-jitsu grappler, the better jiu-jitsu artist, I guess you could say. I think those all line up to Moises, but I think Ogden's on the up and up. Ogden hasn't really gotten that one big signature win, and I think it comes here against Thiago Moises. I don't think he finishes him, but I think he wins by decision. We did pick Ludovic Kline to beat Thiago Moises, and I think I was a little bit more confident in Ludovic Kline to beat Moises than I am in Trey Ogden to beat Moises, but I think he has the tools to do it, and he's a decent enough grappler in his own right to be able to compete with the grappling of Thiago Moises. So I'm going to go Trey Ogden, 29-28 unanimous decision. I think he wins 2-1 and gets the biggest win of his UFC career over a veteran. So give me the underdog. Give me Trey Ogden, 29-28 unanimous decision. All right, the next fight up is in the flyweight division between Jose Johnson taking on Felipe Bunes. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm very surprised that Bunes is the underdog here. And I'm going to tell you right now, I already placed a moneyline bet on Felipe Bunes. I like Bunes. I think that he is the more dangerous fighter in this fight. I think that he has the better striking. I think he has the better jiu-jitsu. And I really think it just comes down to the cardio. Is Jose Johnson going to be able to survive the first round and a half, 2 rounds, and then beat up Felipe Bunes in the third round? I worry about the third round, and I think that the fighter who has the better cardio in the third round, more than likely it's going to be Jose Johnson. If I had to make a bet on who's going to be the fresher fighter in round 3, I think it would be Jose Johnson. But we've seen Johnson get taken down. We've seen him get controlled. We've seen him throw up submissions off of his back. Like I said, he might be able to lock up a triangle on Bunes. He might be able to, try to search for a front choke and get a submission, but I think that he's going to be outgunned on the feet. I think Bunes is way more explosive. I think he's way more powerful. I think he's going to land the crisper, cleaner shots on the feet. And I think he has the grappling to be able to submit a guy like Jose Johnson, who has been controlled, who has been taken down, who has been out-grappled, and who has been submitted in so many different ways. Like he survived against Asu Almabayev, which, does worry me a little bit because I don't think Bunes is as good of a grappler as Asu Almabayev, but I think he's a lot more powerful on the feet, and I think he might have more crisp technical striking than a guy like Almabayev. I think Bunes, he looked good. He won the first round against Joshua Van, and then he slowed down and things didn't work out for him. But he won the first round, and Van was getting pieced up. He caught the kick, got a good takedown. Got to the top position, went for submissions, landed the right hand, landed the left hook, landed some front kicks, cracked Josh Van on the chin, looked amazing in the first round in his UFC debut, and then just kind of got slowed down. And I think that could be an issue here. I wouldn't be surprised if Johnson got destroyed for 2 rounds, survived, and then Bunes was so tired from the amount of output and aggression and the chance that he's going to try to finish this fight that he gets finished himself. If I'm going to play Jose Johnson, I'd probably play Jose Johnson round 3, and that would be about the only way I would play it. But I like Felipe Bunes, man. I think he's the cleaner striker. I think he's sharper. I think he has good takedowns. I think he has the jiu-jitsu to compete with Jose Johnson. And I think he's better from the top position while being able to throw up submissions off of his back. So that's all you got to tell me. I like Felipe Bunes here. I think he finds a TKO. It could be a submission. I wouldn't be surprised. I'll go with sub because I think he could hurt him and then choke him out. So I'm going to go Felipe Bunes to get the job done here via a second round rear naked choke submission. We've seen Johnson give up his neck and almost get submitted by Almeida. I think it would probably be a similar situation where he gets hurt, loses a scramble, and gets choked out. So give me the underdog. Give me Felipe Bunes via a second round rear naked choke submission. And yeah, I like him a lot here, to be honest. All right, next up is in the welterweight division. You have a battle between Punahele Soriano coming in trying to get his second win in a row at 170 pounds, taking on Uros Medic, who did compete at 155, I believe, but has looked pretty good in the UFC aside from a loss via submission to Miktebek Orobai, who is a 155er, came in on short notice and ended up getting a submission over Medic. So looking at this fight, I think the cleaner striker is without a doubt Uros. I mean, he's the cleaner striker. He's got better footwork, better movement. He cuts better angles, and he also has a more well-rounded striking game. He throws more kicks, he puts combinations together, and he finishes his combinations with kicks as well. He does have issues, however, in getting taken down, and I think some people are going to look at Punahele's last fight against Miguel Baeza, where he was able to win that fight via decision. Probably should have been a TKO, but that's besides the point. But he was able to win that fight, and he won it based off of his wrestling, based off of his top control, based off of being able to maintain top position and land vicious ground and pound. I think that there is a path to victory here in the grappling against a guy like Medic because we've seen it get exploited before. We've seen him get taken down. We've seen him get held against the cage. We've seen him get out grappled, and we've seen him get submitted. However, I don't think Punahele's wrestling and grappling is going to be able to number one, hold down Medic for 3 rounds, and I think if he does take him down, I don't necessarily think he gets a ground and pound finish, and I don't think there's a lot of chances that he would go for a submission. And what this really comes down to, even though it doesn't matter when it comes to fights, you know, MMA math doesn't make sense, but, you know, he was beating the crap out of Dustin Stoltzfus and then got taken down and got submitted. Stoltzfus is a good grappler, but he's mainly known as a kickboxer. He came into the Contender Series being known as a kickboxer, I believe. I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But when I look at this fight, man, I think the cleaner striker is Medic. I think the fighter with more weapons is Medic. I think Medic does have some takedown defense issues, which could be a problem against a guy in Punahele who will use the wrestling and does hit very hard. But I also think that the straight punches and the clean technical striking of Medic is going to be able to catch Punahele in between his shots. But we've also seen Medic get dropped with a big overhand right from a guy like Matthew Semmelsberger. Yes, he came back and won that fight with a spinning back fist, but he got dropped, he got hurt, he got rocked in that fight. It would not shock me one bit if Punahele just landed a straight right, or a straight left, or an overhand, you know, right on the chin and knocked out Uros Medic. We've seen him get dropped, and we've seen him get dropped by fighters who don't really throw a whole lot of volume. So, yes, Medic came back against Semmelsberger, but still, that's not the greatest look, and he got dropped pretty bad. I think if Puna lands that type of shot on the chin of Medic, it's a big problem. But again, this is also a fight where it's southpaw versus southpaw. That outside foot positioning is not going to be there. It's going to be like an orthodox fighter versus an orthodox fighter, and usually southpaws, they're not necessarily accustomed to fighting fighters in their same stance, which can, number one, make them hesitant and make them gun-shy, but in the same token, it can get them caught because they're not used to getting hit by fighters in that same stance. They're used to that outside foot positioning against an orthodox fighter, against a right-handed fighter. And to be honest, I kind of think that we might see a fight where it's not as action-packed as people may think, but I do think that Medic will eventually find a KO. But again, it would not shock me one bit if Punahele found a shot on the chin of Uros Medic and put him down. But I am going to go with the doctor. I'm going to go with Uros Medic. I'm going to go with a second round TKO. I think he's going to catch him with a shot coming in, or maybe finish a combination with a head kick and put down Punahele Soriano. But again, it would not shock me at all if Punahele landed a shot on the chin and knocked him out. I think best way to play this fight might be fight ends by knockout, but if it comes to a straight up pick, I understand the Punahele pick, but I just can't pick him at this point. I'm going to go Uros Medic. Give me Uros Medic, second round TKO over Punahele Soriano. I think he puts him down here, and I think he looks good doing it. All right, up next is a battle in the featherweight division, and a fight that I think is being severely underrated on this card. I think not enough people are talking about this, and it's a battle between the prospect killer in Christian C-Rod Rodriguez taking on the undefeated Austin Bashi, coming off of the Contender Series, looking for his first UFC win. Let me tell you something, man. Putting a guy on the Contender Series against Christian Rodriguez in his first fight in the UFC, this shows you that they have a lot of faith and a lot of hype behind Austin Bashi. Now, the prospect killer, like I just said, is Christian Rodriguez. Isaac Dulgarian took his O, even though I don't think he did enough to do so. Cameron Simon handed him his first loss in the UFC. Raul Rosas Jr. handed him his first loss in the UFC, his first and only loss in the UFC. I think Christian Rodriguez is going to win this fight later if he wins. He will be able to survive the early storm and more than likely will be the fresher fighter in the second half of the second round into the third round and could get a late finish in this fight. I think if Bashi wins, Bashi has decent striking. Bashi has a very solid wrestling game. He's very explosive, very heavy on the forward pressure, and once he gets you down, he's looking for submissions, he's looking for ground and pound, and he will rinse and repeat between position, submission, and pummeling your face in with ground and pound. Pummeling, position, submission. Pummeling, position, submission. That's what this guy does, and he's not going to stop. Now, has he fought a guy at the level of Christian Rodriguez? No, but he does have a win via submission over Oscar, who is a pretty highly touted prospect, or at least was at a certain point in time, who almost got into the UFC, but it just didn't work out. Maybe we'll see him back there one day, who knows? But, you know, that win is a good win. Oscar is a very well-rounded mixed martial artist, very solid striker, good combinations with his hands, punctuates combinations with kicks, and has good grappling and grappling defense in his own right. So that guy was actually supposed to debut in the UFC against Cody Stamann, and then there was some issues that caused that fight to get, you know, postponed, and it didn't happen. But I do think that Oscar probably would have won that fight against Cody Stamann if that fight would have taken place. It was still a tough fight, but I think he probably would have got that one done. Looking at this fight, man, we have seen Christian Rodriguez have issues with grapplers. Isaac Dulgarian, forward pressure, heavy wrestling, going for submissions. But I don't think Austin Bashi is the same level of wrestler as an Isaac Dulgarian. I think Dulgarian is, yes, he's still going to bring that forward pressure. Yes, he's going to be on that front foot. But I do think that Dulgarian is a little bit more technical with his wrestling, which made it a little bit harder for Christian Rodriguez to defend. And he still was able to defend and come back later in fights, or come back later in the fight. Now against Julian Juicy J. Arosa, Christian Rodriguez was piecing him up, beating him up, landing big shots, rocking him all over the place, and then he got caught in the Arosa special, which was that guillotine, either a guillotine or a darce, but he was able to lock up the guillotine, put in the body triangle from the bottom, which puts that extra pressure on the spine with the pull up from the choke and the pushing down of the guard, and he was able to get that submission at the end of the first round. I believe it was end of first round, early second round. That was a fight where it looked like Christian Rodriguez was on his way to winning that fight, but it was also a fight at a high elevation, and Rodriguez said that there was some issues with the cardio due to the high elevation. Can you take that? Do you have to take that with a grain of salt? Yes, because it's an excuse, but at the same time, it's valid reasoning because we've seen cardio issues from fighters a lot when they do fight at a higher elevation. I think Austin Bashi is definitely getting takedowns. I think he's going to threaten with submissions. I think if Bashi wins, it's by submission. But I've been going back and forth here because you can't let the odds really dictate how you make your picks. You know, that will work out sometimes, but a lot of the times it doesn't. And in this fight, I do think Bashi is going to get takedowns. I do think Bashi is going to threaten with submissions. We've seen Rodriguez get submitted, like I said, but he survived with high-level grapplers like Raul Rosas Jr., like an Isaac Dulgarian, who's a very, very high-level wrestler, and in my opinion, a much higher-level wrestler than Austin Bashi, but I think Bashi might be a more credentialed grappler, where Dulgarian is the better wrestler. So I think there's more threat from a guy like Bashi with submission attempts, but I think if we get past the, round and a half, end of the second round, and get into the third round, I think it goes into the hands of the veteran in Christian C-Rod Rodriguez. I don't know who I want to pick because I have an idea, but I'm not too sure. I've kind of been flipping back and forth. I do not agree with the odds with Rodriguez being over a 2-1 underdog. But again, like I said, you can't really let the odds dictate how you make your picks. But I do think this fight is going to be closer than people think. I do think Rodriguez is going to have some success. I do think Rodriguez could get a finish late if he slows down Austin Bashi. He probably gets a TKO finish more than a submission. And I think if Bashi gets a finish, it is a submission, probably a guillotine or a rear naked choke. I don't know, man. You know, this is tough. I'm going to go with my initial lean, which was Christian Rodriguez. So I'm going to take the dog here. Oh, I don't know. I'm back and forth on this one. Don't take my word for it on the pick for this fight, but I'm going to go with Rodriguez. I'm going to go with him. I think Bashi's for real, but I think Rodriguez might be a little bit too high level of a test for Bashi in his first fight in the UFC. So give me Christian Rodriguez to win. I'm going to go with a third-round TKO. I think he slows down Bashi, survives a hell of a first round or round and a half, and then starts stuffing the takedowns, landing ground and pound, landing shots on the feet, and tiring out Bashi until he finishes him in the third round. Kind of like the Bulgarian fight. I think it plays out similar, but I think we do get a late TKO from Christian C-Rod Rodriguez. So give me C-Rod, Christian Rodriguez as the plus 220, plus 230 underdog to hand Austin Bashi his first loss in professional MMA and spoil his UFC debut, killing another prospect. I'm going the prospect killer. Give me Christian Rodriguez, third round TKO over Austin Bashi. All right, next up is in the middleweight division in a battle between Chris, the action man Curtis, taking on Roman Kopylov. You have 13-3 on the side of Kopylov with a 31-11 record on the side of Chris Curtis. This is a good fight, man. Both of these guys have very different styles. Chris Curtis is a patient counter boxer with a lot of power. Doesn't really throw a lot of kicks, but he can catch your kicks and counter with a straight left hand. He throws good straight lefts down the middle, good 1-2s, and he puts his combinations together. We've seen him get knockouts in the UFC. We saw him get a lot of knockouts early in his career, knocking out Phil Hawes in his UFC debut, knocking out Joaquin Buckley, which look at what Buckley's been doing lately, even though it's up a weight class at or down a weight class at 170. Chris Curtis is a good boxer. He just at certain points lets the mental side of fighting get to him inside the cage. I'm not even talking about outside the cage. If you play too patient and you play on the outside and you get Chris Curtis frustrated, he's going to leave himself open. He's going to run into some counters. And I think against a fighter like Roman Kopylov can get clipped. He got clipped a few times by Claudio Ribeiro, who is nowhere near the level of striker that Chris Curtis is. Curtis is a way better boxer. He cuts angles very well. But against a southpaw, again, kind of like Medic and Soriano, it's going to be awkward for these guys fighting a same stance fighter. It's a lot easier for a southpaw fighter to fight an orthodox fighter because they can get that outside angle. They're used to circling towards their right. They're used to getting that outside foot. And it makes the kicking game harder because it's harder to judge the distance and it doesn't leave that open side if you're fighting an orthodox fighter as a southpaw. But it also makes boxing exchanges harder because you both have the same weapons. You're both throwing a jab. You're both throwing a cross, and they're both coming from the same side. So it's going to be whoever can adapt their game better to the southpaw versus southpaw style of fighting. And I think the fighter who has the more well-rounded game is Roman Kopylov, and he does have grappling, he does have wrestling as well, but Curtis has very solid takedown defense. He got taken down a few times by Brendan Allen, but he also said that he was hurt in that fight. I believe he had a hamstring injury that he's coming back from for this fight. But Curtis is dangerous. Curtis likes to use that Philly shell, shoulder roll, catch, come back, come over the top, straight left, come down the middle, straight left to right hook, check hook to counter as the opponent steps in. But it's going to be harder against the southpaw because, like I said, the check hook really isn't there. The jab's there. The cross is there. And I think the fighter who has more weapons is Roman Kopylov, and I think the fighter who uses their weapons better is Roman Kopylov. He's going to be able to fight from a distance where Chris Curtis is not comfortable. Curtis is going to have to push him back. Curtis is going to have to pressure him. He's going to have to take a Fluffy Hernandez approach. But the difference between Fluffy Hernandez and Chris Curtis is even though they're both pressure fighters, Curtis doesn't use his wrestling offensively. Curtis will pressure and throw, 2 or 3 punches, but he doesn't really throw a whole lot of volume even when he hurts you either. So that makes it a little bit harder for Curtis because we know he's not going to be able to really resort to the wrestling and grappling. We know he's not going to be looking to get takedowns. He will be able to close the pocket, and in the pocket, I do favor Chris Curtis. Outside of the pocket, I favor Roman Kopylov. Better kicking, better movement. In and out movement, left and right, straight left down the middle, right hook, left kick to the body, left head kick. Chris Curtis is also very good at catching kicks and coming back with counters. I think this fight is close. But if I have to make a pick, I'm going to go with Roman Kopylov. I think he wins this fight by a split decision. I wouldn't be surprised if he landed a head kick and knocked out Chris Curtis. We've seen Curtis get rocked. We've seen him get hurt before. We've seen him, get tired towards the end of fights. I do think Kopylov is going to have a suspect gas tank later in the fight as well. But I also think if you take that Fluffy Hernandez fight and think that that shows he has bad cardio, I think you're sadly mistaken because Curtis is not the same level of pressure, output, volume, and takedowns. And especially with the wrestling and takedowns that Anthony Fluffy Hernandez is. So I do think Curtis can hurt Kopylov. Kopylov gets cut. He gets cut in a lot of his fights. He bruises pretty easily. So even if Kopylov's winning and outstriking him and outlanding him, if there's a lot of damage on Kopylov's face, maybe they give the decision to Chris Curtis. But I'm going to go Kopylov, Roman Kopylov by split decision. I think he works his kicks. I think he has the bigger moments in the fight. And I think he just outlands Chris Curtis and has more volume over 15 minutes. So, and if anybody's going to use their wrestling, I think it's Kopylov. He might be able to get some takedowns and hold top position, even though Curtis is very, very difficult to take down. So give me Roman Kopylov. I'm going to go Roman Kopylov 29-28 split decision. I think he gets the job done against Chris Curtis. But again, this is a tough fight to call. All right, up next is a battle in the middleweight division between Cesar Almeida taking on Abdul Razak Al Hassan. This is a good fight. This is a striker's delight, and I do think there will be a finish in this fight either way. I think this fight ends by knockout. We've seen Cesar Almeida have decent clinch defense, decent takedown defense, but Roman Kopylov was kind of able to take him down at any point. But I still think Cesar Almeida has decent takedown defense. I think Roman Kopylov is just that good. Kopylov lost to Anthony Hernandez, but at the same time, I think his takedown defense is better than what it looked like against a guy in Kopylov, because I think people may underrate and undervalue Kopylov in his UFC career and just how good that guy is because of how he's looked in certain performances. I think Abdul Razak Al Hassan has 1 round to win this fight, and I think it's probably a first-round knockout if he wins. The longer the fight goes, the more that a guy like Cesar Almeida, who does have victories over Alex Pereira on the kickboxing circuit, he's going to be able to make reads. And the thing with a guy like Almeida is he's going to be getting better and better and better. He is just an older fighter. He's, I believe, in his 40s. If I'm wrong, late 30s, 40s, somewhere around there. Razak Al Hassan has been in the UFC for a while. He's a UFC veteran, had some issues along the way, but at the same time, Razak Al Hassan has power, and he is more than capable of knocking out Almeida. The longer the fight goes, I think it plays towards the game of Almeida because I think it's going to be mainly a striking fight, and I think that maybe Razak gets 1 takedown, maybe 2, but I think we're going to see a more improved takedown defense game from Cesar Almeida in this fight. And I think he's going to be prepared for the striking. I think he's going to defend a lot of the shots from Abdul Razak Al Hassan. And I think he's just going to start slowly picking him apart. Catch, boom, come back with the counter. 1-2 down the middle. Good low kick, move around. And I think he's going to have a tough first round. He might get rocked, and I think he'll be able to survive. But the longer that the fight goes, I think it plays towards the more seasoned and more experienced kickboxer. And I think that Razak Al Hassan is going to be looking to make this a striking battle. I don't think he's going to be looking to grapple that much. And even if he does, I don't think he's going to have that much success with his wrestling game against Almeida. I just think that Almeida's takedown defense is a little bit underrated just because of how it looked against Roman Kopylov. Because if you do remember, he was picking apart Roman Kopylov in certain parts, man. It looked like he was going to start to slow cook him and beat him up. And yes, he wasn't able to get the finish against Ihor Potieria, but we saw he threatened with a guillotine choke. He got to the mount. He landed big ground and pound, looked for elbows. Probably should have got a TKO at the end of the second round, and it just didn't happen. I think Almeida is just getting better and better and better. I do think that Abdulrazak Alhassan, like I said, he's powerful. He has the wrestling advantage, but I don't really think we're going to see him use it. And he does have the power to knock out Almeida, but I think Almeida's too crisp, too clean, and too experienced in the overall striking game to get caught by Abdulrazak Alhassan. So I like Abdulrazak Alhassan, I like Cesar Almeida to slow cook and start to beat up Abdulrazak Alhassan. I think he starts to land good counters. I think he starts to snipe him. I think he starts to land body kicks and then come up the middle with knees and uppercuts. And I think he hurts Abdulrazak Alhassan towards the end of the second round, lands a big body shot, lands a knee up the middle, and puts him down for a TKO. I'm going with Cesar Almeida to get the job done against Abdulrazak Alhassan via a late second round TKO to look very impressive in this fight. Have a tough first round, have some close calls. He might get rocked, but I think he survives, and I think Almeida puts away Abdulrazak Alhassan. It wouldn't surprise me if it was in round 3, because I think this might be a more slow-paced, methodical fight, because that's what Almeida likes to make things, but I think it's going to be end of the second round. So give me a late second round TKO for Cesar Almeida over Abdulrazak Alhassan. And I think he's going to survive and then slow cook Alhassan. All right, up next is a battle in the welterweight division, the co-main event of the evening between Santiago, the Argentine dagger, Ponzinibbio taking on Carlston Harris. This is a fight that I really don't know which way I want to go. I think both of these guys are kind of glass cannons. I think the way better technical striker is Santiago Ponzinibbio, but I also think the awkward striking of Carlston Harris can leave openings against a technical striker like Ponzinibbio. We've seen Ponzinibbio get rocked and dropped and wobbled by guys like Kevin Holland, who are technical strikers, but at the same time, being a technical striker, they can still get hit by those wild shots, and I think that's what Carlston Harris brings to the table, are those wild shots, big looping hooks, big looping uppercuts. And, I picked Carlston Harris against Chaos Williams, and he got put down quick and early. I picked Carlston Harris against Jeremiah Wells. I needed him to win that fight in order to win like an $800 parlay, I remember. It was like $750 on like a $10 bet. And, Carlston Harris locked up that Darce choke at the end of the fight. I believe it was in the third round, and got that Darce choke and got the win. So we know that the better grappler, Carlston Harris, better jiu-jitsu, Carlston Harris, awkward striking, Carlston Harris. I really think that this fight is a coin flip. I think Ponzinibbio is the way better striker. I think Ponzinibbio's fought the way better fighters, but I also think Ponzinibbio is a lot older at this point in his career, and it wouldn't surprise me if he, got knocked out. I'm going to say the best play for this fight is probably under 2.5 rounds, because I don't like both sides, but I think both men are liable to getting finished, and both men are, capable of finishing themselves, or getting a finish themselves, I should say. I really don't know. I don't love this co-main event. I think it's an interesting fight. I don't think it should be the co-main event, but, gun to my head, man, what is it? 30-6 versus 19-6. Gun to my head, coming off a vicious KO loss like Harris is, I'm going to take Ponzinibbio. I'm going to go Santiago Ponzinibbio via decision. We'll go via third round TKO. I think he probably finds the chin of Carlston Harris and knocks him out. Does he have the same power as a Does he have the same power as a Chaos Williams? No. But I think he is much cleaner, much more technical, and has fought much better guys than Carlston Harris. But Carlston Harris is dangerous. He might rock Ponzinibbio one time, jump on his neck in a front choke, and put him to sleep. So I'm gonna go Ponzinibbio via a second round TKO. I think he lands that hook to the right hand, and puts down Harris, just mainly coming off of that big KO loss in his last fight. I can't really trust him, but I don't like this fight. I wouldn't play this fight. I would stay away from this fight on either side, and unders and overs, I'd stay away from it. If I'm playing anything, it's probably the under 2.5 because I think there is a case for finishing equity on both sides, but I'm going to go Ponzinibbio, second round TKO over Carlston Harris. All right, up next, a battle in the women's strawweight division. The main event of the evening in a rematch between Mackenzie Dern and Amanda Ribas. Breaking this fight down, I don't see it playing out too different from the last time that they fought. I know it was a long time ago. I know that, they've both made a lot of improvements. But if anybody's made more improvements since the last time that they fought, I think it's Amanda Ribas. I think her defense is still not the greatest, but I think she has better defense on the feet than Mackenzie Dern. She's got still really good takedown defense, and we know that Mackenzie Dern will strike with you, but she doesn't really wrestle. She wrestles with judo wrestling, hip tosses, getting to body locks, inside and outside trips. She doesn't really shoot traditional takedowns. It's something we've talked about with Mackenzie Dern before, and it's something we will continue to talk about because she doesn't really go the traditional wrestling route. She looked good in spots against Amanda Lemos, but we know Lemos has a lot of deficiencies when it comes to the grappling, but she can jump guillotine, she can go for submissions in her own right, but she was piecing up Mackenzie Dern on the feet, beating her up, dog walking her, but when it got to the ground, it was Mackenzie Dern's world. I think Amanda Ribas is nowhere near the powerful striker like an Amanda Lemos, but she has good takedown defense. She has jiu-jitsu in her own right. She can go for sweeps. She can get hip tosses. We saw her get takedowns against Mackenzie Dern in the last fight that they had. I think Mackenzie Dern's striking is better, and it's getting better, and I think Amanda Ribas is also a very hittable target. Both of these girls are very, very hittable, but I think if anybody's better with the counter striking, if anybody's better with landing their shots and getting out of the way, I don't think it's by much, but I still think I would lean towards the side of Amanda Ribas. I think that Mackenzie Dern is probably going to get some takedowns, but I do think that even if she gets the takedowns, I don't think she's going to submit Ribas, and I don't think she's going to be able to hold her down long enough to be able to win rounds based off of control time. We saw her get taken down and get controlled by Rose Namajunas in Amanda Ribas, but Mackenzie Dern, she probably has better jiu-jitsu, but she's not the better overall wrestler and grappler. She's not the better overall mixed martial arts grappler than Rose Namajunas, and she has nowhere near the level of striking on the feet to the point where Ribas would fear that striking and not expect the takedown. Now, that could open up the big shots of Mackenzie Dern. We've seen Dern land big overhands, rocking Angela Hill. We've seen her drop opponents. We've seen her land big hooks, big overhands, and her striking is getting a little bit cleaner. She showcased some decent striking against Lupita Godinez and was able to get some wrestling going as well. She won that fight via decision in a fight where I was pretty sure Lupita Godinez was going to win. I've never really been big on Mackenzie Dern. I was big on her earlier in her UFC career. At this point in time, I've still kind of soured on her in multiple fights. It's come back to bite me in the fight against Angela Hill. And I want to say I picked Mackenzie Dern there to get a submission. And it went the decision, even though it shouldn't have gone to the decision because she was piecing her up on the feet. And Angela Hill's a decent striker. She's just never really been able to put it together except for some of her recent fights in the UFC, aside from that loss to Tabitha Ricci. But in this one, I think Dern is the better grappler. I think Dern has the better jiu-jitsu. But I think Amanda Ribas' takedown defense is good enough to stuff most of those takedowns. And I think she's much better on the feet. Even with the improvements that Dern has made, she's still a level below Amanda Ribas when it comes to the striking. Ribas has decent overhands, a decent jab, good pull counters, 1-2, pull 2, 1, block the 2, come back with a cross of her own. She's very good at countering the opponent's punches, 1-2, pull 2, cover counter, and she's very good at landing the right hand, and I think that will be, a big weapon here for her against Mackenzie Dern. And I think some people will sour on Amanda Ribas' fight IQ, but she's pretty good at cutting off the cage and kind of moving her opponents into shots, and I think she could do that here against Mackenzie Dern, because Dern looks good until she starts to eat shots. Once she starts to eat shots, it tends to go south. And yes, she could resort to the wrestling, she could resort to the grappling, she could get to the top position, but I think Amanda Ribas has better takedown defense than a lot of the girls that Dern has fought, to the point where if she rocks her, she probably stuffs the takedowns and tries to land ground and pound or stands back up to the feet. Dern is always live for a submission against anybody that she fights, but like I said, I think the more improved fighter at this point is Amanda Ribas. I think Ribas has the defensive wrestling and the hip tosses and throws that Dern doesn't really see from a lot of opponents that she faces, and I do think that she is going to be the much better striker at range. She could get clipped, she could get rocked, we've seen her get hurt in fights before, but I think she is the more technical fighter. I think she makes better reads, and I think she has the better fight IQ than Mackenzie Dern. So I am going to take Amanda Ribas to win this fight. I like Amanda Ribas. I'm going to go with a 4th round TKO for Amanda Ribas. Could it go to decision? Yes. Does it probably go to decision? Yes. But I think with the defensive wrestling and the striking and the long-rangey punches of Amanda Ribas, I think she could put Dern out and finish her off. Does she have a lot of power? No. But she's technically good enough, long-rangey, puts her shots together, and has good enough defensive wrestling to stuff the takedowns and, work Dern back up to her feet and start to land some bombs. So I'm going to go with a 4th round TKO for Amanda Ribas against Mackenzie Dern. I do think she will piece her up. I think she will damage her, and I think the damage will be too much in those championship rounds. So give me Amanda Ribas to go 2-0 against Mackenzie Dern and win the first main event of 2025 with a 4th round TKO over Mackenzie Dern. All right, that's going to be it for my UFC Vegas Dern versus Ribas 2 preview, predictions, and breakdown. I hope you guys enjoyed my predictions. Make sure to leave your predictions and your thoughts on this episode in the comment section below. I know it's been a long time since we made a video on the channel, but we're back, we're locked, we're loaded, and we're ready to crush 2025 with every card moving forward. I'm your host, Double M. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and smash the notification bell with a spinning back elbow into a flying scissor knee so you don't miss any future uploads from the premier mixed martial arts and pro wrestling channel on YouTube. Let's cash these tickets and let's crush the competition with the first card of 2025.